you might actually get fired now for buying Zendesk because it's not the best tool and your business is at risk if you don't start to move faster. It's called Salesforce, but actually it should be renamed to Supportforce because they make more money actually from their customer support platform than they do their CRM. Growing really fast. Last year, we 5.35x in revenue, and we're planning to do almost 4x this year. So really, really fast revenue growth. In the beginning, it was almost like the Silicon Valley HBO show, and like, hey, could we like capture some of that in real life and like put it online? The rest of the world skipped email, right? Like if you're in South America, like you use WhatsApp. We have a strong belief that one of the only advantages of startups is speed. My co-founder actually shared a chart that showed we are shipping 40% faster than 6 months ago. And like a lot of that has to do with just like people leveraging AI products. Yeah, well, I think the greatest gift a founder can give their team is product market fit.
And before we begin, a quick thanks to Stifel Bank. From venture debt to general banking, they provide world-class support to my portfolio companies. Now on to the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Unpack Podcast, the podcast for operators by operators. I'm your co-host Vignesh, and I'm a partner at Sierra Ventures.
And welcome again, everybody. I'm Arvind, partner at Geodesic Capital, and today we are very glad to have a friend, Marty Kaushas. I hope I did a good job there. Founder, CEO of and Chief Support Officer, as he calls himself, at Pylon. Pylon is a lot of things, and I'm sure we'll get into details. But Marty spent a bunch of years at Airbnb and a couple of other places. And as we always like to do with this pod, we love for this, the guests to sort of dive into some of their background, and then we will dive deep into everything around customer support and many rapid features that Pylon has been sort of piling on. So with that, Marty, over to you, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast. My name is Marty. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm the co-founder and CEO of this company called Pylon. We're building the first AI customer support platform that also is specifically built for B2B companies. My background as a person, I was a software engineer for a bit out of school, worked at Airbnb, realized big tech was not for me, and I really wanted to build a company. And then I spent 2 years pivoting on ideas before we eventually landed on the initial idea for Pylon. And then even after that, we've evolved the company multiple times in that 3-year period. So that's my personal background. And then the company background, for people who don't know, we've been around for 3 years. We're around 85 people, growing really fast. Last year, we 5.35x in revenue, and we're planning to do almost 4x this year. So really, really fast revenue growth, trying to hit crazy targets. And if you know us for anything, it's probably our content on LinkedIn and shipping incredibly fast as a company. So yeah, excited to talk about the company, how we build it, in our space as well.
Maybe Marty, before we jump in, I always found a couple things were interesting about you as a person and the team that you put together. One, I think you guys use this phrase, happy hackers. Correct me if that was the correct terminology, but
happy grinders, yeah.
Happy grinders, apologies, happy grinders. But one of the things that was interesting to me was obviously you said your experience in big tech wasn't great, but I think to me the interesting thing is you took that, kind of figured out the right sort of people to put together, and ultimately end up at this the great success that you're having right now. But I didn't really kind of read too much into the 2 years of the pivoting that you guys did before. And where I'm going with this question is, I think for a lot of the AI companies that you're seeing today, I don't think everybody lands on the right thing from day one. But in order to be able to actually pivot and find the thing that works, you have to have a team that sticks by you. How did you actually figure out the right people to work with? Because this is something, as an early stage VC, you see a lot of the folks, jumping on the, YC founder dating and all that stuff. And I'm not saying you can't find great people, but it's hard to find people that are willing to stick by you in the trenches. And I was curious how you went about finding the right people to start this with.
Yeah, so I actually I probably made every single mistake during that 2-year journey after leaving Airbnb. So I went through 2 different sets of co-founders, probably like 5 different ideas before starting to work with Advith and Robert and working on Pylon itself. What I'll say is, the first co-founder was very specific to an industry. And so once we realized that, hey, the initial idea wasn't going to work out, we couldn't really pivot together and actually hurt our ability to make progress. And so that's why that didn't work out. The other co-founder, I never was able to convince him to leave his full-time job. So he was moonlighting at the start, but the lifestyle of startup building is not something he decided he was going to pursue. And so I kind of made both of those mistakes. And then finally, I realized during those 2 years, I actually don't really care about what industry or product we build. I'm more just excited by company building and kind of the whole startup journey itself. And I was talking to a former roommate of mine, Advith, and he was feeling the same way. He actually had been pivoting around on ideas with our third co-founder, Robert. They met at Caltech. And yeah, I basically just told them, look, like at this point, I just want to work with people I really love. And we quickly aligned on the foundations of why we wanted to start the company. So one, we think about it in like fun and adventure terms. So actually that's our why. The what, we very cleanly aligned that, hey, we don't want a $100 million exit. We want to get to $1 billion in revenue and build a generational company. So the what was very aligned. And then the how was, it's not like, hey, we're just going to spend 8 hours a day working, which I feel like at the end of COVID, a lot of people had iterated to. But actually, we wanted to build a very grindy company, probably like more analogous to, early stage companies, like the first like batch of SaaS companies or like Web 1.0, 2.0 companies. So we were aligned on the how, the why, the what, and the how, and that made a really strong relationship between us.
And I really like the way you described it. I think at the end of the day, those are the three key things that you got to figure out, and then ultimately figure out the right product that can scale. I want to go back to that phrase "happy grinders" because obviously for the three of you, you guys have, this is your company, this is your baby, and so you spend a lot of time. You can have that grindy sort of culture. I guess the question is, how do you scale that up? And I think for the folks that think about building this sort of company, I think you can find people that say they want to grind, but that happy part is hard to figure out. And so curious how you guys have thought about that. How did you kind of pick and select for that happy grinder trait?
Yeah. So it starts with us, and we didn't like come up with that term and be like, hey, that's the type of person we want to recruit. That's just like who Advith, Robert, and I are, right? We started the company for fun and adventure. We didn't start it because we were like excited to make a bunch of money or like, hey, we had this problem we were so passionate about. It was just, hey, we love the idea of company building and think it's really exciting and fun. We, in fact, often talk about it like a board game. And so, it starts with us, and then other people, of course, want to work with other like enthusiastic optimists who also like to put a lot of their time into building. We naturally then attract other people like that. And I remember there was actually one early engineer who we turned down. We were like on the fence. This was one of those like early hires where like, oh, they are very grindy and they are very good, but they don't have that like optimism like we do. And they're kind of more like unhappy grinders, if that makes sense, or like want to kind of like work alone and do their own thing. And that just didn't feel correct for us. And that was like one of those big decisions at the time of like, okay, the culture of the company we want to build is the like more collaborative, more fun type of environment. And so, we've just made those decisions in hiring, and that's just continued to compound.
No, thanks for that commentary. I guess maybe just still on people, company building. How would you characterize the Pylon of today, right? Compared to, seems like very fast growing, a lot of product shipping. What sort of characteristics of individuals are you sort of opting for nowadays?
So we have 4 core values for the company at this point. One is sprint the marathon. We have a strong belief that one of the only advantages of startups is speed. And so, you have to sprint. A lot of people would say, okay, but you can only sprint for so long. Well, too bad. Like startups aren't fair. We have to sprint for a long time. And so we are trying to be a top 1% company, not like a top 10% or 50%. And if we want to do that, we have to sprint for a very long time and figure out how to make that work. So sprint the marathon is one. Know the product is another. So we found actually the people who haven't worked out at the company are almost always people who try to skip really deeply understanding what a product does because the surface area is so wide. And so we're trying to figure out how to operationalize this better, but like the people who want to go deep and like treat Pylon as a product, almost like Lego pieces that you can assemble into like many products is really important. And so knowing the product is another. Happy grinder is the third. And then finally, win as a team is one we just implemented. And we found that just as the the company has scaled, there are so many different functions that like don't even necessarily interact or know about each other, but they should. And so we wanted to kind of implement that and make sure it's clear that we either win as a company or we don't at all. And so those are kind of the 4 qualities that we look for and kind of like guides that we want the team to use to understand how to make decisions.
Got it. I guess maybe building on your earlier comment about how maybe it was big, the what, why, and how. Maybe on the why of building Pylon, right? I've over the last decade, I've seen a bunch of companies being built, and we maybe know that some taken over by PE guys. Let's not name names. Maybe you will. But what did you see was not being solved well, and why now? Why here? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking a step back, for us, we had that goal of getting to $1 billion in revenue in 10 years. That was an explicit goal of the company. And, we worked backwards from that to see what types of companies can even get to that order of magnitude of revenue. So we looked at public, at the time, SaaS companies who were worth over $10 billion. So kind of an assumption that they've gotten to $1 billion in revenue and they're public. So it's real valuations, not fake. And so we looked and saw that there were 26 public SaaS companies at the time who were worth over $10 billion. And we're like, okay, that's not that many. You seem to hear about unicorns all the time, every single day, but that's like a small number, all things considered. And we looked at those companies, we said, how do they get to that revenue scale? Like what's different about them? And we learned it's all about market. And there are 2 types of markets that you can get to that revenue scale in. One is more horizontal. So, hey, you can sell a product into effectively any company. So think like payroll, IT, customer support, sales, marketing, things that basically every company needs. Or 2, you're just happen to be in a mega market of some sort, right? So maybe you're in e-commerce or healthcare. And so we decided to specifically then look at the biggest company of that list, which was Salesforce. Salesforce at the time, $300 billion market cap company. And we looked at where they actually make their revenue from. And I'll ask you guys, do you guys know like where Salesforce makes its revenue from? Like what are their biggest SKUs? Which products?
Service Cloud?
So Service Cloud is like the one no one knows about, right? Or at least you wouldn't think because it's called Salesforce, but actually they should be renamed to SupportForce because they make more money actually from their customer support platform than they do their CRM. Last year, I think they ended at like 10 billion in revenue for Service Cloud. And this is in ARR, it's crazy. And then I think probably around 9 billion for Sales Cloud. So we kind of saw that, realized that market is incredibly large, and then decided to explore and look for trends within that space. A second belief we had was the fastest growing companies are typically the ones who latch onto some sort of new thing that's happening in an existing category and try to capture the new behavior and build a product around it. So at the time, we were LinkedIn DMing people, asking them like, hey, can we like learn about your space? Can you tell us about what your problems are? And the initial trend we spotted, and this was like right before all the AI stuff started, was a lot of people were starting to move their customer communication to new channels like Slack Connect, Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp, Discord, Telegram. So they were moving both their internal communications to these platforms and now their external communications away from it as well. And so that was the original trend we spotted. That's what we started the company around. And then timing was just incredible where ChatGPT came out, 7 days later. And then that, of course, inspired a lot of the product that we would end up building all the way up to today.
We'll come back to this question around, especially Slack, given the fact that they're now part of Salesforce and some of the comments you had around Salesforce. I think interesting topic as you think about defensibility. But one of the things I did have a question for you was on the scale piece of it. Because obviously now that you got the idea, then the thing you did was just hustled hard on LinkedIn. And I think you've been a big proponent of that. You guys have obviously scaled really fast. And I'm sure, you still do it. But I'm curious, how do you get that to the rest of your like sales team and the rest of the culture? Like, how do you get them to effectively either draft off of that or replicate that strategy on their own so you have a team of productive sellers and go-to-market folks?
Yeah, well, I think the greatest gift a founder can give their team is product market fit, right? It's like make their job easier by building in a space that's big with a lot of demand on a problem that's really hard, or that's a big pain point. So that is like the thing that we should spend pretty much all of our time focused on. And then if we do that right, everything else works and there will be many prospects and many customers and the product roadmap is clear. So we've always kind of worked backwards from, hey, how did we get to $1 billion in revenue and kind of like build in that direction, hopefully solving a real pain point. And so, I was, of course, Pylon's first SDR, first AE. And I personally have closed like 1.8 million in revenue for the company. And then, we hired our first AE, I want to say like probably like 2 years, not 2 years, probably a year and a half into the company. We had just crossed, I think, like a million in ARR. So, probably too late. But yeah, I mean, his calendar was completely filled when we did that. So he joined, there's no time to breathe, right? You're just like closing as many deals as you can. Your calendar is filled with demos. And so you're just learning really fast. And so we've always kind of had more pipeline than capacity. And so from a seller perspective, it's actually been quite easy to just like take in everything. And like, in fact, like most people have been dropping deals up until this point because there's just too much going on. So this year is the first time we're trying to like overcorrect in the other direction at least a little bit. So we max out like closing as many deals as we can. But historically, it's just been, we have had more demand than capacity to serve. So that's it has not been hard historically to hit numbers and achieve really great results.
Can you just talk a little bit about what you are trying? I'm curious, again, making the shift from an abundance of leads to, finding ways to scale top of funnel. It's just new things and new muscles that you guys have to build. Just curious, kind of what are you trying? Who are the business models? Who are the business models and companies that you're modeling yourself off after?
Yeah, so I think we do try to learn from other people a lot. And so we'll ask like, sibling companies who are at similar stages, like what they're doing. And what I've learned is that, so first off, like if we take a step back, historically for us, LinkedIn was actually one of the biggest sources of pipeline for us. And so, our first set of customers was all like first like few customers were all like in network. The next like 50 were probably all LinkedIn DMing, where we were just like cold messaging people, effectively being SDRs. And then the next like majority was actually from LinkedIn content. And so we started posting on LinkedIn just as an experiment because we heard of another company who was doing it and it seemed to work really well for them. And months into that, it really started to work. And at the time, like it's crazy. Like no one remembers this. It's crazy because it's only been a couple of years, but 2 years ago, we started posting on LinkedIn. It was not common at all. Like LinkedIn was just a like terrible social network. Like no one's posting anything good. Like you don't really go on there to read content because it's all bad. But we started posting about kind of like build in public type journey stuff. And that started to really work. So up until probably 6 months ago, LinkedIn content was almost like 80% of our pipeline. So like crazy. And then since then, we made it a goal to diversify into new channels for all sorts of reasons. Like, hey, LinkedIn could change their algorithm. Hey, other people could start doing what we're doing. We want to be more targeted. And so we started investing into SDRs. And I'm a strong believer. A lot of people might say like, why don't you just like automate the SDR job, whatever. Turns out people pick up the phone. Right? Like as much as people want to say it's like a fully automated thing, like turns out if you call people, they'll pick up at some percentage and that will convert into pipeline. And it allows you to be very targeted. So we invested into SDRs. Last month, SDRs contributed, I think, to like 35% of our closed won pipeline. So very, very meaningful. Then, on the marketing side, lots of channels that we're experimenting with. So, LinkedIn is still, the organic content is still like one of the top. We've also invested now into paid search, into LinkedIn, more like ABM strategies on LinkedIn. We have an events marketer who this year we're treating as experimentation, like can conferences really work when we invest into them? And so I'm kind of looking at like all the options of channels and we're mapping out, okay, if this channel would work, how much like pipeline could we generate feasibly? And so kind of like map it out in a table. And then for each one, we're placing bets and trying to assign like a full-time person to invest into the channel.
Got it. One question on the LinkedIn thing. So I think the way you've thought about the channels and the way you're thinking about testing new things, that all makes sense. The part that I was curious about was, honestly, it feels like you guys did something different on LinkedIn. I mean, I know what you're saying about LinkedIn, but I mean, as VCs, I feel like I've been on LinkedIn forever. I feel like I've had companies posting on LinkedIn. I mean, for a very long time, LinkedIn was a great sales tool. Outside of their HR play, the sales piece of it was huge for them. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of it may have been happening on direct messaging and stuff like that, but I'm curious, was there something that you guys figured out? Like, was it just more authentic content? Like, because I feel like people have tried it and you guys clearly got better results than others.
Yeah, no, it's purely just better content. like that really so okay, there are two things that work for us. One was better content. So like if you look at even today, if you look at the bar of content on LinkedIn, it's just so bad because it's your professional network. People are very scared to post. They're like on X, for example, you can post anything, right? And like people will like that. They'll like that it's inflammatory. That's like the default there. On LinkedIn, everyone's like very hypersensitive to what you post. And so and no one like people post in like a very markety way, if you understand what I mean. Like first off, they'll post from their company page, so it kind of feels like an ad. They'll be like, oh, here's a feature. And it's like, okay, that's not like what gets people interested. And we started posting not just about features and products that we're releasing. We started talking about just like ourselves and our company and our story. It turns out people love storytelling. They love like characters in stories. They love like, someone going up against a big incumbent. And so we created like almost like I used to say in the beginning, it was almost like the Silicon Valley HBO show. And like, hey, could we like capture some of that in real life and like put it online? And so, yeah, like tried to make it much more of a story with characters that people could follow along with. And then the thing that also benefits us is that in our category of customer support, it's really dead and silent. Like no one's really posting anything. And I think it's part of the personality of support teams in general. Like they're just not as like I don't know about extroverted, but they don't like to post and like talk about themselves. And so unlike if you're like in sales tech, maybe people have been posting forever and everyone's all about like, oh, like very comfortable doing that. In customer support, it's the complete opposite. So I think, we kind of had both of those things going for us at once where we started writing better content and then our category was just like very dead in terms of thought leadership and posts.
Yeah. Maybe just the food for thought. That's a great point about sales teams kind of always being open to posting because they're in the business of like pushing. Right. Whereas maybe customer support now, also organizations are kind of repurposing their teams and how they structure it. Like customer support is part of like upsell, right? Cross-sell, right? I think maybe that sort of lends a bit to them becoming more forward-leaning, perhaps.
Right.
Maybe you're seeing that in people who are engaging with you guys.
Right.
But just shifting gears a bit in terms of just going back to the why build here and now. What kind of business model approach are you taking? I mean, like, because I think we are all aware of this whole seat license based kind of model. This past 2-3 weeks, everybody's been posting around, talking about LinkedIn, posting about how SaaS is dead. Everything is in red. What is resonating with your customer base? What would they like to pay for?
Yeah, great question. So we are usually not the types of people to jump at like very hypey things. We're actually just more focused on, hey, let's think from first principles. What are our customers doing that we can automate, or how can we help them move faster? Or what are like feature requests that they have that other products are not releasing. And so we take that approach. Pricing, to be honest, at the end of the day, maybe a difference between us and like other customer support companies. Everyone in customer support AI is very focused purely on ticket deflection. That's where you get like the Decagons, the Sierras, the Fins. All of them are trying to just deflect tickets and get paid for it. Whereas for us, we are not only trying to deflect tickets, we're trying to do a lot more work around the customer because we only serve a B2B company audience. And so here's how to think about it. In like consumer, you have super high volume tickets with very simple questions that are very repetitive. So it might be in the extreme case, like an e-commerce company who has like cancel, refund, change address, whatever. That might make up 80% of the volume of tickets. And you can like really automate the crap out of that. On the other side of that, where you're more B2B or enterprise, the questions are going to be much more complex and there's a lot more context that's spread out across many different sources. So you might have context of an AE who sold the deal and promised something. You might have a CSM who meets with them and has been helping them implement something. You may have a solutions engineer who helped with a migration. And so unlike the consumer use case where all the context of the customer is like right there in that conversation, in B2B, you have all this context that's spread across many sources and a relationship to protect and like much more risk in answering incorrectly with like a higher volume of types of questions as well. So for us, we're actually focused first on aggregating all the data across these different sources. So like, hey, your Gong, like, believe it or not, no support platform other than us connects into your Gong calls. right? And so if I'm like I am a support team, I get a question, of course I want context into what we promised like 2 months ago, or what's going on with the CSM, or whatever it is. I need to be able to query that data. I need that context to pop up for me. So if I'm in a B2B case, I don't want to go ask those people. I want the context provided to me immediately so I can answer the question faster. I also, because of that higher risk in answering the question, I actually do want more human in the loop, at least until I start to trust the system. So there are like dimensions like this that mean we're not just going for ticket deflection right off the bat. We're actually going for how do we like get context really quickly and help teams move faster as a starting place. That's one thing. Another dimension of B2B is like the volume of tickets is much lower generally. So as an example, we have a Series B company, the customer, they're low tens of millions in revenue. They only have a few hundred customers and they only get like 500 tickets per month. And so even if you're like, let's say you're Fin, you charge $1 per resolution. First off, you can't resolve all the tickets because they're really complicated and like they're a security SaaS vendor. It's really like complex. So even let's pretend you could answer all of those questions and get paid $500 a month. It doesn't make sense. Like the model actually doesn't work at all because the volume is much lower and the complexity is much higher. So we're seeing that like it's not as clear cut in B2B that, hey, you're just going for pure ticket deflection,
Right.
or at least that's not where we're seeing most of the value today. Actually, most of the value today we're seeing is an aggregation of data across many sources, making teams move way faster, and then also long-term consolidating a bunch of products that people typically buy around the support platform into one kind of like post-sale system that we create.
Yeah. That's an interesting there's a lot to unpack there, no pun intended. But I think maybe just to be clear on the pricing, you talk about deflection. So there is, containment by the AI, right? Like how much you're deflecting. So would your customers, depending on segments that you're tackling, are they still comfortable with licensing or outcome-based? Because I think the outcome-based works when it's purely managed by AI and not really human intervention, and customer support by nature of it, the human does have a role. So I'm curious, what are you seeing? I mean, it's a ongoing debate, I'm sure, but
because so much of our AI functionality is like, I'd say like the AI agent, like ticket deflection is probably like 20% of our AI functionality. Actually, like, there's so much AI spread across all these internal workflows that we built out. So for example, hey, like you want to be able to aggregate every feature request and every bug that you're getting requests for. So you can pass that on to the product team. Hey, you want kind of context on what knowledge base articles are out of date that we should update quickly or create from scratch. Or, hey, I want to know which customers are at risk of churn because they mentioned a competitor, or they're saying things that kind of indicate that they're really unhappy about something. And so, I think for us long term, we probably actually move more towards like a credit-based system because there's like all of this different AI functionality scattered across the product. So I really like Clay's pricing model. I think that's pretty good, where different types of kind of enrichments in their case or like actions might result in some sort of cost. And so, I think, it's really hard to structure it in that way because like, when you just look at deals, you're like, you're like losing a lot of like potential costs that you could apply to a customer in this case versus that case, or hey, you might have really enterprise customers, and so it might be a huge logo for us, but they have low volume, and so like maybe it's like kind of, but it should be a really big deal. So we're still figuring it out. But my sense is that ideally, long term, we probably have some sort of like more credit oriented system, so that you can leverage. You don't have to think about like, I'm paying for this AI and then this AI and then this AI separately.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe a couple of threads to pull on. One is you mentioned the folks like Sierra and I think maybe even Decagon. Those are buckets I probably would not have put you in, right? I mean, again, this notion of putting in buckets, but
we're not the same at all. Like we've never competed with either of those companies.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. I guess maybe then, just for the audience, we should think of you Zendesk plus maybe the gain sides of the world, and then and please educate us. What else are you guys building in terms of features to sort of provide this 360 view of what customer support, customer success could be? And then I want to layer in the aspect of defensibility. You mentioned a couple of things about knowledge sources, bringing them together, providing a single plane of view, I guess, single plane. why don't you build on that? I mean, helpful to learn of what features you're building now, and kind of defensibility, how you think about it.
Absolutely. So both of those questions are super related for us. First off, where we are today, you can like the simplest way to think about us would be like an AI native Zendesk to start. Like that, like if you want to like really dumb it down, just AI native Zendesk that B2B companies are like it's optimized for their use case. So we're starting there. What you're going to see from us long term is that we're actually going to look more like an AI Salesforce. Like if you think about, hey, there are all these different functional groups that have to work together off of customer data, like that's actually what we're going to start like bleeding into. So here's how this looks. Right now, we collect all this customer context to help you answer support questions. So, there's the customer conversations, there's account context that we bring in from different sources, there's product usage data that people are singing into us. Now, we can use AI to structure all of that data and make it useful for various teams now. So, for example, hey, there might be a support question that comes in that's related to, it might be indicative of like an upsell conversation that should happen, right? So we should flag it now to an account manager or a CSM or an AE, whoever's handling the logo, for them to go look into. There might be a feature request that comes in, right? That now needs to be structured and passed to a product team somehow. Hey, we might have a support ticket, of course, that's handled by the support team. We might even have a marketing team who says, hey, I want to understand which of our customers asked for this feature because we want to send out a update to all of those people. And so they want a list of customers that have requested something. We have all this rich customer context on like who wants each thing. And so for us, like we start with support because this is like a great place to start aggregating customer data, but all of the data we collect is actually useful for pretty much every single adjacent team that deals with anything customer related. And so we want to increasingly start, ping our support teams, our champions, telling them, hey, you can now be strategic to every different function in your business. So go tell the CS team, give them this link where they can see all the accounts that they have that are at risk of churn. Hey, go to the marketing team and show them that they can query all of this customer data and understand who wants each feature. Hey, go give the feature request log to the product team and tell them, instead of anecdotally, hey, here's what people have been requesting, here's like every single customer who have requested any feature at any point and you can filter it. So all of these teams are now going to understand like, oh shit, Pylon is a place that I want to start using, like living in. I want to start like leveraging that data and somehow building it into my own workflows. And because we have the customer context from these conversations that are happening in support or even Slack channels or other places, we just are like fundamentally a better like data set than almost anyone else. We have more like real-time, up-to-date conversations than basically any other product.
Hey, Marty, I wanted to dig into the context piece of it because this is a big thing that I've been thinking about for the past year, and I love the fact that you guys are layering on multiple sources of context, kind of across different systems. But I had a question for you on just kind of how you guys even designed the system, because obviously you started with Slack data, and so mostly conversational, and then you layered on kind of voice data. But as you've kind of gone farther and farther, there's, I guess, more both quantitative and qualitative data, right? Like, for example, if you know like the deal size of a customer, you can layer that on when they say, hey, I want this product versus another customer. But then there's like workflow stuff related, right? Like product may say like this thing is more valuable than that thing. And that, those sorts of data points kind of matter. And so the question I have is, how do you kind of think about mixing all that context together to actually create a reliable signal that can be used across the organization?
Yeah, it's going to be different per customer. And actually, I think part of the reason, for example, Salesforce has been so successful as you move up market and people have more complex business processes is it's like very flexible. And so we're allowing people to prompt on top of the data in all sorts of ways. And so they can like it almost like clay level UX where you can create a new custom field or like new piece of data, like synthetic data essentially on this data set to power some workflow that you have an idea for. Now, there will be some defaults, of course, like, hey, like, account sentiment, or for example, or hey, like, this is a really easy way to set up like competitor mentions or stuff like that. But I think like over time, there's no way that we can be such an important part of someone's like setup without allowing them to like customize it directly to their company. And that's, I think, how you build like a really, really big generational company that gets to $10 billion, $100 billion.
Do you guys have a notion of reinforcement learning from your folks or from the people within the company? I've always felt that was a pretty interesting part of context that doesn't necessarily get captured by things like decision traces or just conversations and things like that. Curious how you guys have I guess enabled the organization to make the system smarter.
Yeah, I'll say right now we're extremely high touch with our customers. So our solutions team and CS team would be the ones who actually go in and like help iterate with customers on a lot of the stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't say we're like at the point where it's like very self-iterative yet, but that's definitely the long-term state, right? It should be that, hey, like increasingly as people gain confidence in the system, we should be able to be like, okay, like we answered in this way last time, or like, we mark that we don't like that it behaves this way, and it should ideally offer suggestions to some sort of admin of the system of like, hey, I want to make this change, that change, that change. And so it self-corrects. But I do think like we probably should still have human in the loop in some capacity for like a long time still, especially given that for us, we deal with like more sensitive customers and larger accounts versus just like a consumer.
Yeah. And just a reflection on your earlier statements was that I have always appreciated watching you guys from outside in is this notion of taking what the customer feedback is, the customer feedback is, and having that sort of lean into the product side of the house. I think that's something that has usually been lost in the process somewhere. So I think, and it kind of comes back to what Vig and you guys were talking about, is like getting more context in so that there is more fidelity to the information and helps with decision making, right?
And it's really incredible. I mean, like when you think about it, okay, like if we can pull in even just the support questions and the customer conversations over like CS emails or Gong calls, that alone, like if we can just aggregate every time someone's asked for a certain feature request across those sources, that's incredible. And it like solves a massive problem for every single one of our customers. Every single one of our customers has this workflow and no one has a good solution. And actually the whole like point that I made in the beginning of, hey, we're more B2B oriented, like there's evidence that Zendesk has not built for this. Salesforce Service Cloud has not built for this because like every one of our B2B customers has it, but they've never touched it. And so you've always had to buy other tools, build like custom workflows yourself. And then also you see how this like bleeds into other parts of the organization. Like I was talking to a COO recently who said that they have this workflow problem where she's getting all these requests from the post-sales team. So, more customer success side of, hey, we have these feature requests. Sales team is saying, we have these feature requests. And she's like, okay, how am I supposed to like combine these, prioritize them, whatever? And so you can see like, okay, if we start to like aggregate the stuff like on the post-sales side, suddenly they're going to want like, hey, could you also like grab in some sales context? And like we start to just like bleed into these other cross-functional teams that all really need actually very similar workflows to us. And I would argue that like our long-term, like we should become more important for a larger company when we're focused on retaining and upselling existing business. We all know how important like that motion is. And so keeping people happy, knowing how to grow them, I think will become like much, it's an easier way to gain revenue and protect it than just get new business.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's a part of Qualtrics that you can also build within the...
Totally, 100%. I mean, it's like the thing is, again, we own all these like customer communication channels at this point. And from our like starting point where we said, hey, we realize customer conversations for B2B are just moving to these new channels, like not just email anymore, but Slack, Teams, Discord, WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS. And like one thing you guys may have already seen is like the rest of the world skipped email, right? Like if you're in South America, like you use WhatsApp, and it's not like a WhatsApp, hey, you text a business phone number, like that would be the consumer use case, but actually no, it's a group chat, right? Where you have like your company and their company and a bunch of people in it, and you're like all talking in like a almost like group text way. And so that's a use case no one's ever touched. And we're like, it's so obvious for us when we think about it from this B2B lens. And so, yeah, because first we're getting into these channels that no one has ever touched and are the growing use cases. And then two, AI just lets us structure all of this data in a way that's meaningful. And so now we can be the first people that capture it in the first place, which is like P0 problem. And then two, we can start to make it actionable and useful over time.
Got it. Maybe just keeping on with the thread of this defensibility and being an AI native company that you guys are, how do you guys think about, hey, what is critical, we must build internally, and what can we sort of, take the best of breed as we build our stack?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, man, and the question is more on like internal, right? So we have, of course, like all the external stuff, product wise, but internally as a company, how do we move much faster with AI? There are all sorts of internal things we're doing. So, we have the obvious one, which is, of course, move faster with tools like Cursor, Claude Code. I'll say I was in our leadership meeting this past week, excuse me, and my co-founder actually shared a chart that showed we are shipping 40% faster than 6 months ago. And like a lot of that has to do with just like people leveraging AI products because we haven't grown the team by 40%. So like absolutely insane gains. So there's obvious stuff like that. On the go-to-market side, I think a lot of the account mapping, discovery on which prospects are the important ones to go after. We're using tools like Clay, Unify, et cetera, to kind of enrich account lists and try to find who are the most important accounts to go after. So I think that's working really well. On the marketing side, we're trying to develop almost like a marketing brain. So we're trying to see like, how can the marketing team just like get context from all these sources? And we're trying to build this into Pylon and then be able to ask these questions like, how do people think about this problem? How do they like phrase, like what language do they use to address this type of problem? So they can turn that into copy for either content or ads or, anything else. So I'd say like, yeah, every single function is using it. And then it's so meaningful to the point where we're thinking about giving people like 20% of their time, almost like old Google style, where they're like 20% of your time, like do on personal projects. I think now we might do something more AI related where it's like, hey, look at something that you do every day and try to start automating it, or like, yeah, take some time to think about how to put AI into the process.
And Marty, can you maybe so obviously that's from a kind of building perspective in general. One question I had for you was just on the context layer and how you guys manage that, because obviously you guys have a lot of different conversations coming in from a bunch of different sources, and I think one of the things that's interesting about managing this stuff is it's always like context is not static, right? Like like there's a time component to it, there's a hierarchy component to it, there's like a personal component to it. And I'm curious, like, how have you guys designed your system to actually handle that data, ingest that data, and then present the system with the right information at the right time? Are there any lessons that you've kind of had, if you could go back and start over from the beginning? Like, are there lessons you've learned on how to design a system of context that works at scale?
I mean, I think, yeah, we've gone through like many iterations at this point. Like one interesting insight for us was so first off, we decided to kind of build in like a more of a platform way. So, we knew we weren't going to be able to go out and recruit the best AI engineers that exist, right? Because OpenAI and Anthropic probably grabbed all of them, or Meta, we for them basically. And so it's like, okay, well, if we can't do that, like, can we take normal software engineers who have built SaaS for the past 5 years and enable them to actually build in a more AI native way? So internally, we've actually built out our own like personal AI platform where any engineer can more easily like build an AI feature, because we've kind of platformized things. So if you have an AI feature you want to build, you don't have to be an AI expert. You can actually just call our internal API, which simplifies and dumbs down the process of actually creating whatever AI feature you want. And so we tried to platformize from the beginning. And another learning there that was interesting, we kind of looked at open source frameworks at the time that existed, or even like, paid ones that we wanted to build on. But we realized we basically assumed that AI is changing so quickly that like we shouldn't latch on to someone else's like framework, because like the world's just changing so quickly. So we copied, and I wouldn't be able to explain the details of this, but we kind of copied the data models, but then built them ourselves internally.
I was going to say people should join you just for Pylon's purple building. I mean, it's just, I think this notion of building this AI platform internally kind of leads nicely into a thought I had. It's almost like you providing a low-code, no-code platform for your employees to sort of go and the non-tech folks, I suppose, to build features. I think we always see this in every facet of new technology. You kind of see that the application piece is where a lot of value accrues, and then after that, the infrastructure needs to keep up with it, and then so infrastructure kind of grows. So in your own company building, I guess, sort of tagging on to the early part of the conversation is, you know, uh, which parts do you think the enterprises need to spend a lot of time on? Is it the evals part of the house? Is it observability? And what components of the infrastructure that you guys think is going to be very critical for AI native companies to kind of keep in house and offer to the customers perhaps as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. The hard thing, and I'd be curious on your guys' take as well, like things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy. Like you like can't, it's like hard to keep up. So I think, there's all the like tooling around AI, and, we try to make our whatever decisions we can to like stay up to date and like choose the right tools in the right moment. But yeah, I don't think I have like the perfect answer here. I think like all of it, of course, is important.
Yeah.
I will say it feels like, evals versus like using just like off the shelf, stuff. We've defaulted more to using things off the shelf with an assumption that like they're going to get a lot better over time. And then for us, like at the same time, we have this data set that we know one day we can start to leverage more. And so, kind of, trying to balance that out.
Yeah. Maybe I can offer a perspective. It's just, I think you guys seem to be in a great spot because, I mean, this whole cross traffic of data that you're seeing, right? And even if you are able to sort of access the metadata layer to sort of find linkages, and maybe that sort of translates at the customer support success function level, but also maybe there'll be some trends that you can see at the industry level, perhaps, depending on if you have enough corpus of companies.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, we are just like we are at the intersection of so much data. It's really crazy. Like in some ways it's so fortunate for us, like so many things had to like line up for this to work. But yeah, turns out for this like B2B support use case, you just need context from every system. And so like naturally we just like already have to ingest it. And then turns out like, people actually haven't ingested this data into one place in other systems. So we're like kind of a unique place where it just happened to make sense. And it's like, does everyone have their Gong calls in Snowflake? Nope. Do they have it in Salesforce? Not really. And so it's like, where else do you have it? Pylon. Like that's it. So when you do think about the options and like where this data exists today, it really isn't anywhere. So we are truly like the only platform that does this in a way that's like very natural. To solve like one core use case. And then the expansion opportunity again, like, hey, we're going to build these other features for the marketing team, for the customer success team, for AEs even. And we can just like ideally one day enable our champions, the support team, to go send a link to their internal teams, be like, hey, marketing team, like check this out. You can use this for free. They're with it. They're going to realize it's fucking incredible. And then, hey, that's our into the marketing team. Same thing with sales, same thing with support, et cetera, or success.
It's interesting because I actually think the point that you made about the data not sitting in a bunch of different places, to me, this is why the context piece is interesting. Because in the old world, you couldn't actually just ingest a bunch of unstructured data. It was just expensive. It didn't make sense. So AI actually is helpful in that sense. The other thing that's interesting is because of the way the legacy systems were structured, like you can throw a bunch of data into a database, but that doesn't mean it's useful data. You need to figure out what's actually relevant and what's useful, which is why I was curious about how you guys even thought about the context piece of it, right? Because exposing something to a customer versus exposing something to marketing versus exposing something to sales, whatever the use case is, like you will have to tune your engine and the way you actually prompt the model to spit out the right answer that's relevant to them. And that's not a constant process that changes over time, but I'm sure you recognize and notice patterns. And so in my sense, like, yes, you're right. The tools and things like that may change, but your context layer and how that context layer morphs and how you like define it ultimately will be the things that give you some defensibility in this AI world. And it sounds like that's the thing you guys have really gotten right at the end of the day.
Yeah. And again, it is crazy when you think about it, like where does that content, and that's the thing that got enabled by AI for us, right? So we just happen to be at this place where there's this new trend of people talking to customers in these new places. AI comes around. Okay, now we can structure, like our whole data set is conversations, right? So like you could not build these products before and suddenly you can. So the moment you can structure some unstructured like text data into some sort of field or some sort of signal, then you can build a workflow on top of it. So like people could have only dreamed of these workflows before, whereas now like they're completely enabled. And then the more data we ingest, which of course for in a B2B use case is like makes a ton of sense and you have to, the more powerful it becomes. So yeah, it really is crazy.
I think one thing that AI, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but just for intellectual debate, in the past, you were buying a software that actually not necessarily molds to your enterprise workflows, right? I mean,
Yep.
SAP decided something, that's the model. Salesforce decided something, that's the model. But that necessarily is not, completely molding to your business processes. But now I think AI enables, with the power of providing some sort of low-code, no-code sort of offering to the customer, the end customer. They can sort of leverage your platform, in this case perhaps Pylon, to sort of moderate their customer support function and software together and meld it together. And AI kind of takes care of the things at the back. I think that's the beauty of the new generation of companies that are being built.
It's really exciting. And I think also like the moment you have the context layer, I mean, we're all talking about agents all the time. I think like for a hot second, agent swarms was like a hot word for like 1 week. I do think in our case, like, the same work that humans are doing on top of this data, eventually we can start to have agents and like assistants kind of like go around and massage it and work 24/7 to do similar types of work. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. And the step one is, of course, get the context. And then step two is, okay, once the models are good enough, you can build the agents on top.
And Marty, maybe just on that point, I think one thing, just given the fact that you're working with so many B2B folks and so many enterprises, this comment on agents. Like, where are we as far as the state of agents goes? Are people ready to let agents run wild in their environment? Are they like nervous about the thing doing stuff? Like, how are you guys actually seeing?
Absolutely. Now we are like agents talking. And didn't you see that whole Moat book or whatever that's going on right now? It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll say like being in San Francisco, you'd think everyone has AI at this point, but the answer is no. Like most people don't have AI. Like they're evaluating us versus Salesforce Service Cloud or us versus Zendesk, and like they like those products don't really have anything going on. So it's actually, we're still just early days. And so I would say like, yes, people, so the good news is people know about ChatGPT and they use it in their personal lives, even outside of tech. And so that's incredible. That means like they know what's possible increasingly. And then, we're now providing it in, hey, you use ChatGPT at home, but then here's in a business context, we can solve your specific functional problem with AI. And so, we're right at the start. Like most people that we talk to, they think about agents in like a very like early way of just, okay, maybe it can deflect some tickets, but not even thinking about like how it can go further. Yeah.
Yeah, just fast forward. I mean, maybe you're in the same direction, Rick. We are already talking about agentic commerce. We're talking about agents talking to agents, right? In a world, because I've been spending some time on agentic commerce and what does that mean? I mean, so much infrastructure needs to be built. I think there'll be a lot of companies going to be built in that context. But do you think about it? Like, how does customer support, customer success look like when you're creating agents for your customer, maybe, and then they have to speak with somebody? It's just or is it just more data?
It's so exciting. I think there's like so many ways this can go. I think there will definitely be agents talking to agents and like, a bunch of like AI communication happening everywhere. I do think it will be very messy. Like, I don't know, for example, they're the product's more like Zapier level, like workflow things that people are building that are supposed to like go across many systems. I think in our case, we're trying to do as much in one system as possible because that like we can kind of have a more controlled system and guarantees of what the outcomes are going to be. So for us, we'd love to build all of your agents related to customer workflows because that's going to provide a really good experience for our own customers if they don't have to think about managing 50 agents in different places. So yeah, I think there will be agent to agent communication. I think we are trying to be like a one-stop shop for everything customer related. And so yeah, there will be some of that, but I think you'll build the best product if it's kind of all housed in one system and you have access to all the data and workflows natively.
Hey, so look, talking about agent-to-agent commerce, I think Arvind and I have always been excited to hear our guests' hot takes. What's your hot take on the enterprise? I mean, look, you talked a lot about, essentially supercharging every part of the organization. I mean, there's even a world in which you kind of know what's happening. You could feed Claude code to say, hey, there's a bug, go fix it. Like there's just so many things that can be done.
Yeah. And by the way, really quick before you go into that, like, for example, today we released a feature that allows support teams to ask cursor questions about the code base. So like,
Really
instead of going to a PM, instead of going to an engineer, they can just at cursor, like ask the code, hey, like, is this expected? So like you're literally skipping, like support teams are talking to the code base now. And it's like just skipping all this stuff. And so yeah, like 100%.
Well, you know where the question is going then. So is it the future of the enterprise, half the people, quarter of the people that they are today? Like what are you seeing, and what do you tell the CEOs that you talk to when you sell to them?
Well, so first off, all of them have pressure from their boards, especially if they're like professional CEOs, to, hey, we need to like build AI into every part of our business. And actually, one of the things that's exciting is for the first time, it's not, hey, no one ever got fired for buying Salesforce or buying Zendesk. You might actually get fired now for buying Zendesk because it's not the best tool and your business is at risk if you don't start to move faster. So I know a lot of people have assumptions like, okay, this is going to reduce like all these humans across the org. In our case, we find that pretty much every single one of the companies we sell to is like strapped for resources. Like they're not like, oh, we have like, we're right at the right level where we can fulfill all of our customer support at the time we want. They're actually like way behind. And so I don't think actually we're going to decrease the number of people that work at the company, but I think we're going to increase like the number of people they can serve at a higher quality. So I think we'll probably like stop the growth of like more people at these companies and enable them to just move like way faster. And so, example might be, okay, a CSM now can manage, instead of, let's say you're an enterprise CSM, instead of 20 accounts, now you can manage 100 accounts, right? So 5X. If you're a manager of CSMs, instead of managing, 10 CSMs, you can manage 50 CSMs because you have AI running and helping building those workflows. So I don't think, there's like this apocalyptic like scenario where agents replace everyone. I think in our case, especially in B2B, like relationships are important. Like you and like there's so much risk in doing things incorrectly that I do think you will still have humans in the loop in some capacity. And I think for the next like couple of years at least, like we're going to enable people to just move way faster and just fill the demand that they can't right now.
And we had an episode with Gokul Rajaram earlier this year, and we had a similar conversation about just managing people internally. Yeah, your span of control may go up, but ultimately it's the people to person-to-person relationship that matters, and that never goes away. So maybe you can go from managing 5 to 10, but I don't think you can practically manage 100 people.
And the other thing is, like, I think in customer support specifically, a lot of people, again, when they think customer support and AI customer support, they think the like Sierra or Fin use case where you're just deflecting tickets all day. The reason those companies work for that support use case is it's very repetitive, similar types of questions at massive scale. And so, hey, there might be one person who every day answers the same exact question over and over and over and over. In our case, it's like way more complex and it's not that simple. And like a support person's job may be like in a culmination of like 100 different activities and types of things that they do. So that means even if you like automate this one question that takes up 10% of their time, like that does not automate the person at all. You could say the same thing. Like, for example, me as a CEO, I use ChatGPT every single day, all the time, lots of strategy, lots of like research. And if you automate that part of the job, like, does that automate all of me? Definitely not. I can just do more with the time that I have and make better decisions. So I think like for our segment of B2B, like, again, like I'm pretty sure that for a while we would not touch replacement of people. We just enable them to do much more.
Yeah, I think it's a classic Jevons paradox, right? I mean, you make it cheaper things to access. You just realize you can consume more. One thing I think we talked about it earlier part of the pod is that I personally am enamored by the velocity of features that you guys do, which kind of brings back to the question of like, how do you guys decide? Like, how do you guys decide that, hey, what features should we be building? How, like, the cadence of it? I know you mentioned like 40% faster compared to 6 months ago, but like this whole decision matrix, because I think being fast is a moat in AI.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And also, like, when you think about our product in general, so we are trying to replace, so, it's like crazy to think, first off, even, hey, I want to replace a system as important as the customer support platform. That's like a core business system for people. It's even crazier to be like, I want to replace all the customer systems. Like, I want to replace Salesforce long term. And so the only way you could even like start to think about building something that big is like, okay, you take like a really long time horizon and hopefully a lot of things work out really quickly. But for us, for the first time ever, I think with AI, you can both have like a cracked engineering team by default, supercharged with AI, so that you can build a multi-product company much faster. And so I think like you could not build this company, like AI features or not, without like, the AI enablement internally. And so for the first time, let's say, like, for example, Rippling is maybe a great example of a company who, coined the like compound startup phrase. And so, they were really good. And even that for them, I think it took like 2 years to release their second product. We've been around for 3 years. And by like, year 1.5, we had 2 or 3 products already. So it's like just a completely different game. And you could not build this type of company without AI enablement internally.
Hey, one of the questions I have, I mean, you talked about using ChatGPT and obviously velocity of development. I mean, a lot of that's coming from the fact that the model layers are getting so much better. I'm curious, how do you think about, like, is there, like, you train your own models? Like where do you guys see your kind of your stance on the model layer, and how do you stay ahead of what's happening in the model end?
Yeah, to be honest, I think that we are just trusting that the models are going to get better, and we're just baking that assumption into everything we build. So even if like, hey, this specific thing AI is not perfect at yet, let's build in a way where we assume it will become perfect with just the foundational model. And so there's that piece. And then, hey, let's at the same time just like try to win the context game. So like connect into the system so that we can play around with all the context we need. And so, yeah, assumption, base foundational models are going to get really good. 2, let's make sure that we have access to all the right data that we need and own those workflows. And then, hey, once you combine those together, I think everything's going to sort itself out.
Well, I know we're a little bit, actually, we're exactly at an hour. So, Marty, super. Yeah. I think Arvind and I do this, a couple times a month, and like, just clearly the passion and the speed and just enthusiasm you have for the market is just very, very palpable. And congrats on all the progress so far, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Arvind, Vignesh, thank you so much. Super fun. And yeah, this was thought-provoking for me as well. So really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Marty.
Cool.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Unpacked podcast. Big thanks again to Stifel Bank for Geodesic Capital's fund banking needs and my own personal wealth management. They remain a trusted partner. Please remember to subscribe, and we will see you soon. Thank you.